Hello, YouTubers and fellow tankers. I'm Shrine King, and you have arrived to King's Court Reviews for World of Tanks. Today, we are going to talk about the Leo. Now, typically, I would have done a intro to talk about all the statistics to the Leo, but in this case, I'm just going to get right into it, kind of the nit and gritty. What are the pros? What are the cons? How to play? So on and so forth. Now, the nice part about the Leo is it actually gets up to a decent speed. It actually is capable of penetrating quite often, but it kind of depends on the gun. Now, what I will note here is in my play, you'll notice I'm actually using APCR. On the lower guns, the penetration rating was kind of low in comparison to the tier, but I found that because it has APCR, that just made it to where the travel velocity and the ability to snipe targets such as like this, but that one was a ricochet, and the factor that the rounds themselves have a higher chance of normalizing to allow you to penetrate at random angles. Definitely much better play for me. It is costly, but it also kind of depends on your performance. If you do perform, cost significantly decreases, but you wouldn't necessarily be gaining a lot of cash in it. Now, what are the pros? What are the cons? So the pros to the tank is it has decent camo. It has awesome, awesome depression. The gun depression on this thing is crazy. I think it's like at 11 or something like that. So what that means is you can get into like little hilled positions and totally look straight down and then make it to where all they can really see is just like the very tip of your turret. And then because it has decent mobility, so that's another pro, the mobility of it. It is able to move forward and kind of roll back, move forward, roll back. And then also, because of its accuracy, which it does have decent accuracy, is capable of doing snapshots. So the pros to this take are kind of nice. And you'll see here, this is what I'm talking about. I'm in a, what is the Leo again? I forget. Tier 7? Yeah. I'm in a Tier 7. Though, like that Jag is a Tier 8 that has decent armor. And I'm still able to pen them. Right? Now, given I had to still pick out where I'm aiming, but you'll notice aim time is really good on it. I'm able to like switch, or like swap my turret around, so the turret traverse is really good. Now, the one thing I would say is like now, okay, so let me get into cons, right? The cons to this thing is its view range on base is not that great. Its hull maneuverability is not that great. And I would have preferred it to have higher power to weight ratio, so that's the engine power that allows that maneuverability side. So maneuverability is not that bad, but I would have preferred a little more to it. The other thing I would say is that this tank is very dependent, and this is a con to me, is very dependent on team play and capabilities to stay at a distance. The moment you get locked in like very close combat or very aggressive combat, usually you're gonna drop. So that kind of covers pros and cons. So let me talk about the tank line. So this is a starting out as light, then goes to medium, then can go to a heavy, right? Line. Now, I do believe, actually, yes, they have announced now that they are going to be releasing a medium line. So it's worth trying to get through this part, and honestly, the tank was overall just nice. The Leo was nice to play. So it's not that bad of a grind for the tier. I'm sorry, for the tanks. But it will eventually go into a heavy. Now, what does that mean right now? Well, if I were to give any advice, I would say, actually, if you were going to go through this line, I would get through the majority of the mediums and kind of stop there, because there is a chance that you will take that crew and move straight into a medium, and then I would use like event stuff to allow you to basically start a new crew in heavies, hopefully with, you know, brothers in arms and, you know, other skills. But what I want to point out here right now is you'll see just the damage potential of this tank. The ability to just pump round after round after round with the accuracy, and by using the APCR right, I'm actually at a point where I'm able to get that traverse in, and so that way I'm able to pick out people and snipe them, even if they're like they're trying to do the like, you know, roll forward, roll back stuff. So this tank definitely really good as a support tank, or just a damager in general. So how do I advise playing it? You have options, but the one I would recommend is that you play it as a backline assistant sniper initially, that eventually can become more aggressive, right? That is the typical play. And I'll give you another scenario to cover on how that part plays. But you'll notice I'm running binocs. I have camo net. I made sure to have camo on the tank. Very important. And I forget what the other one is. I think I'm running vents, honestly. But that all said, you could go. Well, I recommend that, because if you go coated optics, you shouldn't always be very maneuverable, and like I said, you're going to be playing, like, what I recommend is backline sniper. So really you want to have the binocs so that you're seeing as far as possible, which also means, as a guide, right, if you're in bushes and you are going to fire, you probably want to roll back, let the camo and let your camo net kick back in, and then fire. So that way you have the camo of the bush and your camo net and everything from there. So this is a perfect example of a really good match in this tank, where I played the backliner. I've done all the support. You should even see here, as I'm coming up a hill, I can actually aim down that if I was coming up, and that's the stuff that I'm talking about. So like, if you were coming up on that hill and you had someone that you needed to engage, you could have actually stopped there and just kind of peeked over, and it would have made it really hard for them to fight, especially if they were kind of sitting back. So you'll actually have the chance to shoot them better than they have the chance to shoot you. But this is an example of its actual potential for mobility. So it can get up to speed, it can get places. It's not super fast, but it's not super slow, right? So that's kind of the gist to the tank. So let me talk about the other scenario that I was mentioning, right? Because the next video here is going to show another style because of the armament and stuff that I mentioned. But the other part that you would run into, besides trying to play that backline sniper support, is that you're going to be a scout, right? And this is typically, you don't want to be that guy, right? Because for scouting, you're now depending on your team a lot. Because you can see things and keep them lit, and if your team doesn't know how to shoot them, well, then you're never going to get credit, right? So and that's the part that kind of sucks. But I want to point out here, you'll see that when you go to the next gun, it actually has like 100, what is it? I think it was like 154 penetration, and then 194 if you're using premium rounds. So as I mentioned before, I was actually using the premium rounds over the normal rounds. Now, because the penetration on the normal round is 155 and the premium is 194, I still want premium rounds, but it's no longer a case where I'm like, yeah, I need a lot of premium. I should be able to use the standard rounds over the premium, and that's when this tank to me then becomes kind of like a moneymaker. Right, because the damage potential is still there, right, and it is nice. And actually, you'll see there I did the gun rammer, so I take that back. I actually did the gun rammer. I did not do vents because, again, damage dealing potential, sniper, right? Just plug out all the damage that you can, and you'll see that for the crew skills, if you are at that point, which by the time I got here, that's actually where I was. So I put. What is it, 6th Sense, then move into camo or concealment, and then everyone else I started with concealment. And then after that, right, then I'm looking at other things that can potentially make the tank dangerous, such as, because mine, I'm actually going to be moving them into the heavy, right? So I wanted, okay, let's give them the dead eye, right, allowing better chance for criticals. Then I was kind of debating about stuff, but really because of the heavies, clutch braking is probably where you're going to want to be, right? Again, you can make whatever choice you want because of the heavies. Some people will argue, don't even do the camo, go straight into repairs. I totally understand that model, but honestly, based on the take design and the fact that you're going to be in a medium starting out, that concealment is very helpful for the grind. And when you get to the Emil is, if you do keep the crew, guys, bear that in mind. If you do keep the crew for the Emil, having the concealment is not a bad deal, right? Because that tank is not really meant to be extremely aggressive. It is still kind of a support on the line, right? So the difference there is you're not going to be as much of a sniper, but you will still be playing kind of support-ish, which means being able to stay unspotted as much as possible is still a key thing. It's very useful. So here is a case where you'll see I moved. Not much of my team came, so now I am in a support mode. Now here's the parts I was talking about. Playing to the hills, trying to keep things spotted. When you're in this state, even like coated optics would make no difference. whatsoever. So there's no point to have coated optics for this scenario because they're all within range. I'm going to see them. So that's why the binocs is really important to me. And that's why I recommend it. So for example, if we clear this part up and I get into the bush, I can then use the binocs to extend view range. So now I'm the scout watching that entire line, right? And that's where it kind of becomes killer. And then the other part is here, right? So we're going to compete against camo in view range. Now because I have binocs, I'm sitting still. I will counter his camo if I went over the maximum view range, which I do believe by using binocs, I'm slightly over. I'm at like 460, 470-ish. Right? So that makes it where I'm going to start countering some of his camo even when he's moving. Now, that's just to explain the conditions of where this stuff is good. So now you'll see in this case I was able to get some damage out, not a lot, but I did get 900. Now one thing I will mention is this tank, when you get the bigger gun, you'll notice it takes a little longer on the aim time, but the reload is actually not that much worse. Now here's a case where you see I'm firing. The round travel velocity is still pretty darn good, right? And that's really important. Right? And see, here's that guy again. All right, great. I ended up dying. But you'll see, I was able to get the assistance. That's part of the scouting. Obviously, the ideal scouting scenario would be if I was in a bush, keeping long range. But that's kind of just to the part of the team play, which I can't really change that part, sadly. So that's the case of like when you're trying to be kind of the aggression, but still being able to get assistance. That's the different style that you would run into is being that aggressor. And that's why if you look between the two differences in performance, yeah, I got 1600 assistance, but a lot of that was pretty harsh to try to get, and most of it was mainly because I actually had the team still firing and they were actually hitting. If they weren't, I would have a lot of problems and wouldn't really get anything out of it. Whereas the other style that I played, where I'm supporting the team, I was able to pump out all the damage, and that made it to where, you know, I pulled in like 24 or 2500, and that makes it to where the win 8 rating is like super huge, the experience gain is super huge, stuff like that. So here's another case, like I'm moving around and I'm kind of, you know, doing what I can to support the team, but I'm also getting into position to be the scout, like be a spotter. And that's the design of this tank that really, really benefits. So real quick, let's talk about the line. Is the line worth it? This is all really kind of dependent on who you are and what's important to you. If you are a clan member who's trying to do clan wars, the final tank is rarely ran in clan wars. It's just not considered meta. If your clan will run it, then I would say yes, it's worth it in that condition. The line leading to the Carnarvon, well, actually, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's their tier 10 heavy. It's a cool heavy. It's got a clip. It's got some interesting angling on it. Honestly, the armor of it holds up better than the T57 heavy, in my opinion. So that's why I personally would recommend it if I was trying to compare auto-loaded heavies. It is capable of fighting hills, a hill like Ridge Warrior kind of stuff, very, very well and very strongly. But that said, it is not something you would be able to go it all alone, right? It is ideal to play that tank in team play, right? Having someone else with a consistent output of damage gun that can help the team or help you. So that's one of the things to bear in mind. Now, for the grind, like experience, is it worth it? And I'm gonna say yes, right? Honestly, from like tier 1 to tier 3, I never count any of those because that grind is always kind of shabby. There's only certain like tanks that are actually really cool at like tier 3, which is like the PZ-1C, just because it's like a little troll, right? It just runs around and shoots like 50,000 bullets at people and then still manages to piss everybody off. But honestly, like tier 4 is pretty crappy in the tank, but when you get to tier 5 and you get to tier 6 and you get to tier 7, you get to that's all cool. Honestly, it's actually a lot of fun. What I do mention or will advise is when I'm saying it's all fun, You got to kind of look at the guns too, because sometimes the guns, the penetration value is just not really up to snuff when it comes to the tiers you'll see. So what I mean is, like at tier 5, if you're seeing that your gun only has like 70 penetration, well, that's not going to be good against like tier 7s, right? What you probably would see though is that it'll have nice premium ammo that's like 130, 140 penetration. When you see that stuff, I actually do recommend that you bear that in conditions, right? So it means, hey, if you're against tier 5s, use your normal ammo. But as soon as you see a tier 6 or tier 7, you should just swap, right? And then use that. But again, like here's this again, guys. This is the entire case that I'm saying in pitching for the play of this tank. Stay distance, stay support, use your camo, use your accuracy, use your ability to, you know, look one direction and look the other almost within a second, right? Because I mean, if you look there, I was looking one direction, I looked an entire other direction, and here we go. I'm gonna go right back. Okay, loop, loop, and then go right back, and you can see just how quick that's moving. That is the benefits to this tank. It is capable of support, very strongly so. So that is really the gist. Okay, so here I'm giving an example of, so what I tried doing for this now is I did a video showing kind of like the typical style that leads into like the pros, like the strengths, the play of the game for the tank. One of the things I want to cover is, because it was requested, is what do you do in a bad matchup, or what is considered a bad matchup, such as what are your counterparts? What are the things you got to watch out for? So one, YOLOing scouts, big problem. In certain conditions, it might even be worth not firing at a YOLO scout to try to use your camo as best as possible to hopefully not get spotted, because if you are firing, all you're doing is increasing the chance to get fired. Brawling tanks that are mobile, right, typically like mediums, so like because this one's tier 7, right, you can see the tier 8 and tier 9s, so that means like T54 mod 1, Object 140, T44, right? All of those tanks are really good at brawling. They're angled. Even this light, LTTB, can be a big problem because it has a decent gun, it has decent weight for a light, and it has interesting armor. So it is able to bounce a lot of stuff. Now, nicely, if you're using APCR, you kind of counter it in that way. But the mobility and its capability to put out damage and bounce shots is where you're going to run into some problems. Obviously, heavies is kind of the thing that you don't want to run into. While they are not really your weakness, because the aspect, as I said, this play style is to stay distant, it makes it to where they just can't see you, and you can keep waylaying on them, which is kind of what you see that I'm doing in this match. So, and obviously artillery. So if you did get spotted, and you kind of just roll back a little bit and stuff like that, bear in mind, man, artillery can take you out. You don't have any armor really on the top, so if they get you, they're going to kill you. So you want to be very careful about having it to where you're going to get spotted, and then going from there. Now, that all said, guys, if you don't have Sixth Sense by the time you get to tier 7, that's going to be kind of a problem, because knowing whether or not you're spotted is a real key aspect to this tank to counter its weaknesses. So hopefully you got it. If you don't have it, be careful. So start to identify your camo rating and what distance it is before they will actually spot you. What you're looking at there is take the percentage of your camo, not the actual rating, right? So when they say 780 camo rating or concealment rating, no, that doesn't mean anything. Right? If you want to do the real calculations and figure out what you're doing, you got to do the drop down, and you're going to look at the distance, like basically the concealment that it tells you, and it does it by percentage. It'll say concealment while stationary, and then you'll see like a backslash and another number. The other number means while you're stationary and fired. So if you shot, that's your percentage concealment rating. The other one is saying when you're mobile, and then if you were mobile and fired, what your concealment rating is. So that percentage is based on the maximum view, right? I'm sorry, the maximum draw. No, it's not draw distance. I'm sorry. It is actually the maximum view allowance, is what I should say. It's not really maximum view range. It's maximum view allowance. So you cannot see past 445, right? But you can have vision farther than that that says, hey, anything now over that starts to counter camo. And trying to figure out if your opponent is countering it or not, that's a whole different story. But the typical model here is if you did not have Sixth Sense, what you want to figure out is if you had a certain percentage. So for example, if I have 35 or 40%, which I do believe the Leo gets up to that, while stationary, what I know is, and this is not including any bushes, so this is me being out in the open for whatever reason, right? Which is not what you're supposed to do, so bear that in mind. So if you're out in the open for whatever reason, and you have the 40%, we'll say it's 40%, right? 10% of 445 is really 44.5. If I were to times that by 4, right, to make that 40%, I'm looking at 160 plus the other 20, which is 180, right? So that means I will not be seen from 445 minus the 180, right? It's not saying, hey, I won't get seen until 180. It's the opposite. It's saying I have to take 445 minus the 180, and then that number is what I've got. So that, for example, would be like 280, okay? So that means at 280 meters, you're in danger of being spotted, period. Right? If you're in bushes, I would still pretend on that model because you don't have Sixth Sense, so you don't know. So what that means is you're talking about 3 blocks, essentially. So anyone who's 3 blocks from you, you want to be careful. Right? If you've got the circles, right? Basically 2 blocks in from there, roughly, from the view range portion, or maximum view range, or maximum vision range. There you go, right? So, again, I hope that's helpful. And the matchups, what I will say is, because if you are playing as a support tank, honestly, whether the team is winning or losing, the goal here is you should still be able to perform, right? If you're being that aggressor and your team is sucking, I'm sorry, but you're going to die probably. And you won't get a lot of performance because you were dependent on them. So being this style, if it turns out, for example, one flank is failing hard, don't stay there. If you were on that and you're that supporter and you're seeing they're getting crushed, maneuver before it falls. So get over into a position where you're going to have other support, or you can even be the one spotting so that others can support you. So just bear those things in mind when playing the tank. And honestly, I hope it all goes really well for you guys. And you know, if there is any other like criteria that you're looking for, or let's say, for example, getting into the hard brass like tax numbers for like penetration values, like what is the zoom time, that kind of stuff, absolutely let me know, and I'll start including that stuff. I did do it for a little bit. I didn't get any like responses or anything like that saying whether that was a feature that people liked. So again, tell me like the things that you like. Tell me the things that you don't like, and let me know if there's, you know, maybe things that you want, right? I am totally open, and I will absolutely do my best to try to include as much as I can. But here is a great game. I want to give a shout out to that Progetto. Between him and me, we were able to pull that in, and it was very nice. So like you'll see here, with 1,700 damage, over 1,000 assistance. And I think I had even multiple kills. I forget offhand. I wasn't actually paying that close of attention here. But I wanted to show you the results that you kind of get. So you'll see here, I did get 4 kills. No, 3 kills. Yeah, I got 3 kills. That gave me the second class mastery, right? And then you'll see there's 68,000 with 3,466. Now, mind you, that is with actually the smaller gun, right? The second video you saw was with the bigger gun, and you'll see from there, right, I was placed 3rd. I actually made money. I made money on that. Using my premium, I still made money. That's why performance is all that really kicks in, and it's helping you. So, like, subscribe, let me know your thoughts, and I'll catch you later.